What is cultural tourism? Tourism without culture, some define loosely as visitors on tour buses taking photographs. Or as an English expert defined tourism as the 3 S's: sand, sun, and the third is left for others. To add some close to this bare view of tourism, at least this one scene, add culture. Culture brings art, music, and history, as in museums and famous buildings. And more broadly, culture also includes language and lifestyle, including food, clothes. Cultural tourism still includes thousands of specifics. How can we join them in subtypes for analysis, planning, and policies? What is tourism? Highly diverse, because there's so many types and combinations and criteria, each of which are potentially major parts of a tourism experience. Even 2 persons on the same tour bus may take away totally different experiences. Organizers can try to create tourist experiences in drastically different manner. Italian cities feature selling their fruit or wine. They celebrate a festival for a week of music, dancing, food and wine tasting, hoping to sell their local product as a commercially driven experience. Similarly, there are many tourists who flood Venice and Rome and Florence during the summer, so that many locals leave because it's impossible to walk in their streets or shop in their food stores. Tourists are often hated and treated like dangerous immigrants. By contrast, Chicago grew so rapidly that it's long been a welcoming city of immigrants, long for this short city. And tourists fit too. The city government has explicitly stated that festivals, concerts, museums, tours should be designed to entertain Chicago citizens, not outsiders. The best way to treat tourists as citizens and citizens as tourists, not outsiders. How? My answer today is join cultural tourism and scenes. What are scenes? Some 300 papers have been published on scenes in China in the last decade, and scenes was added to the National 2022 5-year plan. How can scenes ideas help sharpen our thinking about cultural tourism? Consider 3 Chinese examples and ask how scenes analysis works. Bo Chen, Kai Wu, and their team has studied rural activities across China for many years. They've repeated many surveys for the Ministry of Culture nationally, summarized in their annual blue books. Dramatic changes emerge in recent years. Now, rural lifestyle activities often include cell phones, people talking and emailing with their friends and relatives, downloading videos, and exploring social media. Not just rural. The classic rural scene of bowling and talking in the town square has strongly declined, the surveys show. Example 2, extending the traditions of beauty and entertainment in Chengdu, tourism kept growing even in the pandemic years. The city government has explicitly created dozens of new specific scenes like nighttime boats and lights along its river in the middle of the city. Scenes advisors like Wu Jun and others have helped on specific policies in Chengdu over several years. They've carefully constructed scenes combining traditions like panda bears and spicy food and its mountains nearby and riverfront views. Tourism growth is larger than Beijing or Shanghai. Example 3 is a study of specific types of shops and their combinations in different streets of 20 neighborhoods within big cities, studied by Qi Ran and Qi Ji. They precisely analyzed how very specific scenes combine cafes, restaurants, leisure shopping, key shops which are kept open at night, with buses, with trains. These different combinations generate varied multiplier effects, illustrating the scene's concept of buzz, new data sources like social media postings. Counting the numbers of restaurant visitors and social media postings measure buzz with specific indicators. Massive data are now here if we analyze them carefully. What joins these three projects? All three are contributing fundamental transformations in how we work and live. All three recognize that life is more than work. Life includes consumption as well as production. Consider just the economy. It includes both making money and spending money. We have lots of policy debate, news, and data sources about jobs. What about other things? The three examples share working together in the Scenes Academy. And what are some of the bigger reasons which join these three? The classic reason people move for jobs, and thus people left farm jobs for urban jobs. Yet instead of restricting rural residents, government policies could slow urbanization by adding local options, not just for jobs, but for attractive leisure activities. Rather, we need an explicit model of both supply and demand. Traditional economic thinking omits consumer demand in the subtleties of how it works. More careful analysis is not just total visitors and tourists and hotel revenues, but to look at individual types of shops, where the examples of the three which the three Scenes studies illustrate. Types of shops, types of rural leisure activities, changing in specific amenities like malls and beautifying the river in Chengdu. Look at the homes they build in rural villages now in the pictures. The national economic data globally and in China show dramatic decline in agriculture and rise in specific services like restaurants, cafes, and specialized shopping. Trying on clothes, dresses, shoes for size, and combinations cannot be done online or ordered as well as in shops where there are lots of them nearby. How do food and clothes fit for you or your husband and children? Style matters with reputations like names like Armani, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Ferrari. The Scenes approach recognizes all these and does not suggest any one of these factors alone are the drivers of tourism. That these all include jobs, but also religious worship, travel at Easter time to Rome, for example. By stressing the 15 Scenes dimensions shows how we can combine and to generate thousands of unique indicators like numbers of restaurants and museums. Scenes analysis combines case studies of an individual cafe or leaving one rural area, but besides core scene indicators, analysis adds controls of non-scene dimensions like distance, geographic distance, or family size. One small town site may include, say, sculpture, or beautiful mountain views, or a river, or a beach, which may attract high-end tourism. But big cities can do the same and have hundreds of reasons, processes going on simultaneously. Yet they can be nearby, but nevertheless distinct. For instance, Chicago ranks with the Disney locations in Las Vegas as the most attractive in the U.S. for more tourist visitors. New York ranked as 17th. Traditionally, Chicago was a dirty industrial city. How did it change so much so recently? It developed business conferences, which over time would bring not just to go to the conference, but bring children, family members, and stay for several days after the business conference. Thus, Chicago's most visited site is the lakefront with museums, theater, and restaurants, which family can visit while one is at the conference. And evenings, all can visit these entertainments. More visitors go to the Chicago lakefront than to the famous Grand Canyon due not to its absolute beauty, but to the convention site and the diversified attractions nearby. Beijing's Olympics similarly brought sports fans for the Olympics as competition, but the buildings remain as theatrical architectural statements of international cultural scenes. Two dynamics. These combine with far more amenities that together enhance hundreds of complex processes, illustrating subtle cultural tourism scenes. Such diversity enhance some specific processes before, during, and after a crisis like the pandemic. We offer scenes as an analytical tool to help identify and sharpen specific policies. Many examples are illustrated in the appendix, and more than 300 Chinese papers published on scenes. Scenes, including some of its multiple applications, connect to theoretical traditions, such as Carrie Wu and I did a paper on urbanization, to propose the traditional meaning of a more dense physical concentration of residents has been partially superseded by using a cultural conception of urbanity, stressing cosmopolitanism, which combines several different sets of the 15 dimensions. So with this concept of urbanity, we can disconnect and add new meaning to traditional labels like rural to urban migration, assuming the isolation of rural Chinese villages that are still from many seen as local and parochial, and include policy perspectives and evaluation of these. How many people want to visit as tourists to a place, or might visit family and consider these as second homes? Part-time. Why and where visit as tourists or stay longer in a rural area or a different urban neighborhood? Consider these reasons for going. Not just the traditional ones only, but they also consider beauty, nearby mountains, rivers, deserts, which may combine into new aesthetic experiences. These stress holism and the sort of grammar of scenes, like the table of chemical elements, point to the transcending of a single factor stress, like just distance or the bigness of a city. Similarly, this points to the importance of looking into individual neighborhoods, both within big cities, which may have parochial neighborly elements, even in Shanghai. Instead of saying we don't have meaning, which is lost, we stress the where and why traditional folk dancing as symbolic connection of the century-old practice, combined with the Cultural Revolution, which brought back the folk dancing of elderly women in certain public squares. If a local government wants to support dancing in public squares, can they fund this as a traditional budget item, like a park or elderly support in a budget, in ways that can be compared across cities and neighborhoods? How much does public dancing add buzz, and for which subgroups? Traditional local patterns are transformed by globalization, the new social media, migration. International examples show how middle-level concepts like localism and neighborliness are building blocks for new and different ways to capture these kinds of patterns, not just nationally over time, but yes, neighborhoods and age cohorts and some cultures in some things as regional, ethnic, restaurants, types of music, new styles of consumption like vegan food, health clubs, and more people exercising as they learn about health and disease. These in turn led Carrie Wu to show that local legitimacy or trust about COVID reported by citizens vary substantially across different Chinese cities. This can feed into high-level discussions about how to handle COVID policies, as well as neighborhoods, hospitals. Sensitivity to scenes leads to new kinds of ideas about where and which type of folk dancing can fit with art style. In the thousands of new museums now being built in China, what to feature? Why? Several papers by Bo Chen and students Co-authors have explored these issues for museums and visitors to specific cultural institutions. What stimulates art's buzz? The core conception of differentiated types of scenes redefines the theories of Tocqueville, Rousseau on citizen participation, which is still very widespread, including in China. Scenes stress that museums, cafes, and art parks should be conceptually distinguished into many subtypes. First, in the programs, such as the type of artwork or music, and second, subgroup types of audiences more explicitly distinguishable. For instance, the same clubs, even in Chicago and towns in Poland, plan and expect different types of audiences as the type of music band which the booking agents strategically seek to pursue. Their success can be measured by surveys developed for specific measurement of these. Maxime Jaffray discussed these differences, contrasting Paris and Marseille, especially the types of music from Muslim immigrants that vary by city and neighborhood, have been and are measured by the numbers of types of visitors in these different arenas. We have foundations of cultural tourism scenes for centuries. Think of Cairo's thousands of years of pyramids, the Greek Olympic Games, Goethe's Weimar, Avignon's theater, celebrating by adjoining public art shows and festivals today. These join arts and economic growth via smarter cinematography, combining multiple processes, transcending the separate and isolated cases and policies. Thank you.